You should absolutely not be using AI or Rovo within Atlassian, at least not for everything. And honestly, until just a couple of weeks ago, I pretty much never used Rovo. I kind of just stayed away from it because I've tried a few different times and it just didn't do what I wanted to. And it didn't save me time, which is ultimately the reason I want to use these tools, because they can save me time. But with some of the recent changes and some of the ways that I've started to kind of leverage the tool, it's actually become a lot more powerful and useful for me. So I want to cover kind of where to find Rovo, but also the actual practical use cases and things that I'm doing to use it daily and to actually get my time back by using this tool versus Claude, ChatGPT, or even Gemini. So where do we actually go to find Rovo? There's a ton of marketing fluff on this, to be honest, and I want to just put that aside and say that, number one, this is not technically all the features of Rovo. I don't really care about those. I want to know where I practically need to interface with the tool and the agent. And number two, I know that there's other features and things that you could do with it. I'm going to cover the ones that actually matter and make a difference. For example, the top bar, this is Rovo search. Don't really care. This is not something I have to go intentionally use Rovo for. Yes, it's somewhat more powerful. It's just a more better index search. It's just marketing, to be honest. So you could kind of forget about that. And the only two places that Rovo really exists within Atlassian and Jira where you can actually interface with it is with this Ask Rovo. And this is kind of a chat GPT type style tool. This will change kind of depending on where you're at within the Atlassian suite. So if I'm in a work item, it's always going to be on the right side and I could click this button. If you're in a Confluence page, it might be a little button at the top where you could interact with it with a slash command. But this is your chat. So this is anything you would ask, anything you may even want to take action on. I'll show you what that looks like in just a moment. But it's kind of an alternative to a chat GPT interface where you go in, type a question, get an answer, but with some context. So you can see this context here of this work item. I could pull up any work item within Jira and I'll show you exactly how that changes. So you can see that it changed the board. Now it changed to the work item. So it kind of follows you around, which is great. And I'll show you how to use this in a little bit. This is kind of the first way to interact in general with Rovo. The second way is also through the chat, but via an agent. So if you click this drop down, there are agents here, which are very task specific. You could think of these as GPTs. Really nothing new here under the sun. To be very, very frank with you, it's kind of a clone of ChatGPT, but it can take better action specifically within Jira. Claude can technically do this phenomenally well with an MCP, and until a week or two ago, it actually did it better. So that's what I used AI for within the Atlassian suite. I pretty much did it through Claude, but now Rovo is getting a lot better and I can actually use it for things a little bit more practically. So these are actual agents that we can kind of chat with as well and get to do certain things, to run at certain times, etc. And you could create new agents by clicking create an agent. This takes you to the agent builder. This is one of those marketing things where it's like, yes, this is the studio, the agent builder. No other AI platform markets their builders as a separate AI product. Not sure why Atlassian does. Really doesn't make sense to me, but it's just a place to build an agent and that's it. I'm not gonna run through this too in depth yet. I'll cover that in just a moment. But let's go back to our work item. So we can say, hey, how many work items are on this board and currently not closed? So it's going to search through everything and give me an answer back. This is kind of the prime way you want to be using Rovo with the context that you're currently looking at or that you want to index. That's kind of the power of Rovo inside of Jira, Confluence, etc. I sometimes have it write things. Honestly, with like the whiteboard functionality, I've never seen it do anything well. It can generate things for you. They can move around maybe quicker, but in terms of structuring something that actually makes sense, I've pretty much had to create everything from scratch because I'm very picky about how certain elements are displayed. So 32 work items that are currently not closed in the statuses, cool. You get this context. You get the kind of linked information as well. So this is on a very, very high level. If you want to know something quicker, get context on it quicker, you can kind of ask it as you would ChatGPT. If you want to open these and like, let's say there's 100 comments in here and you don't want to read through all of them, you can have Rovo kind of summarize those for you, give you a little bit more context a little bit quicker. So that's pretty much the GPT, kind of ChatGPT side. And then the GPT side, or like where it goes to the agent side, these are more task specific. Now you don't always need an agent because I could say create a work item. I'll say random work item with test data. And it's actually going to do it for me. It's going to give me a work item example and create the data for me. And that's great. You actually don't need to create a whole agent to be able to do this, which is awesome. So if you have small tasks or need to update something, check a field, pull information, do that with Rovo. Don't worry about the agent piece. The agents are very handy when there's a very specific set of instructions that you're going to be running. I'll show you one very specific example that I use all the time that actually works phenomenally well. Real quick, I know this looks like a lot, and if you'd rather just have me and my team help implement exactly what I'm showing you in this video, that is exactly what we do. We're currently opening up 4 more slots for our Jira strategy. We only run 4 of these per month. If you're interested, hit the first link in the description below. So I'll let this run for a second. It does sometimes take a while, and honestly, this is part of the problem with the tool. It wasn't very powerful before, and it just made so many mistakes. It did not understand my instructions that by the time you get it to do something, you could do it faster by yourself manually. So at this point, it's actually getting better, and in some cases it does save me time, so I tend to use it more. Hopefully it'll keep getting better. So here we go. It drafted something for me with all of the test data, and then it told me to give an account ID priority and some specifics, and then it'll create the work item. Cool beans. Very simple. I think there's just a lot of fields, which is why I was indexing for so long. So that's the chat function. Let's go ahead and build an agent to see what that's like and why we would want to do that. So you could click on your little app switcher, and then in here you should see an option for Studio. So we go in here. This is pretty much the agent builder. It's actually fairly straightforward. You go to your agents, and then you click on create an agent. You can create a Rovo agent or a virtual service agent. 99% of the time, it's probably going to be a Rovo agent. Virtual service agents are for customer support with Jira Service Management. So I'm not going to cover that because it's a little bit more specific, but same principles apply. So literally, we're going to type in what we want it to do. I want you to create a comment that says, in progress, every time I summon you. We'll do something funky here. But the goal here is to have a predetermined set of actions or things that we want it to accomplish. It doesn't have to be a predetermined outcome, because then we could just use an automation, for example, a field change. But if it is something that needs some kind of context or information to make some form of a decision, that's when Rovo is going to be the best. So I'm going to say, yes, that's a great name. It's going to give me some other information. Now let's create 3 conversation starters that we might use to summon. Mark this as in progress. Shouldn't be marking it as in progress, just a comment. I'll say start process to keep things simple. So we'll have 1 conversation starter. We'll just leave all 3 actually, but you can have 1. And that's pretty much it. You could keep typing here and saying, hey, I want you to do this. I want you to do this. Honestly, I like to start here and I like to see what it spits out. So we could go ahead and review the agent. And then in here, we could go and configure it. But I've actually found it to be best to go to, and Claude seems to do this best, but I will give Claude the exact things I want Rovo to do. And I will say, hey, Claude, generate a prompt that I can give Rovo to actually utilize. Because when you create agents, and this is the big reason I never found success with it and the way that I kind of use it now, is that you have to prompt very, very specifically with Rovo. It just does not get prompts very well. It's kind of maybe a year or 2 behind the current AI tools, where it was kind of very nuanced and you didn't get great responses without a ton of context and great context information on like adding in, you are a great copywriter, give me the best copy in this style. Now it just kind of infers that information, especially Gemini is really good at that. But Rovo's just not quite there yet. So we do have to get a very precise instructions. If I go back to scenarios and the default one, so here's the literal prompt that it gave me based on what I was chatting it with. So you just go in here, you delete it, you replace it with what Claude gave you or any other AI app, and you're good to go. And the next thing here is to add skills. You don't have to add skills because Rovo can still take action. What I find useful is to add the skills that you only absolutely need, because it'll get confused and try to pick things that you may not need. One great example of that is to create a work item. So there's 2 different options for that. There's create work item, and then there's create Jira issue with advanced configuration. Doesn't make any sense why this is like this. Create work item will literally just give you a summary. This one will give you actual fields, values, etc. So if you're choosing one and you need context other than just a summary, choose this one. Do not choose this one. And then same thing with like, if you don't want it to pull or get certain information, don't use like, create sprint doesn't make sense here, log work. That way it gets less confused. That's kind of the idea here. Honestly, this is all kind of useless. It should all just, if I say create a work item, it should pull the skill automatically without having to associate it. I think this really only exists because Rovo's not as well developed, if I'm being completely honest. I think these skills should be just automatic within the tools. And then whenever I prompt Rovo to do something, it should infer really well and create it for me. I think that's coming, but as of today, this is where we're at. There's also connected apps, which is kind of cool because you can, send information, receive information, check information. Very cool. A lot of these do not work very well. I'll be honest. I haven't found any success with any of these tools yet. I think they will get better. Pretty much everything that I've done with Rovo has been inside of Atlassian and not outside. Again, test this out, see if it works for you. The use cases that I had that would save me legitimate time have not worked. So we'll skip over this. All right, next. So we can add whatever skills we'd like. In this case, I'll actually add comment. Let's see if that's an option. Add comment to work item. Perfect. That's the only skill I'm going to give it, so it cannot get confused on anything else. So that's what we have in here. We could add more scenarios when specific threads are started. We can add identity or information, behaviors, conversation starters. Not too important. I would say conversation starters might be kind of nice to haves, but we can go ahead and activate this agent. And there we go. We can, next time we're chatting with Rovo, use this agent. And I'll show you exactly what that looks like within Jira. So back with our, let's say we'll pull up our procurement board and we'll pull up a random work item and we'll chat with Rovo the same way we did before. This time I'll click the dropdown and we'll ask the progress commenter to start the process. Now it should go through and pull in my instructions. This is a very simple set of instructions, but it will go ahead and add that comment on my behalf. So you could imagine layering this with like multiple steps or having different outcomes, etc. It could be very, very useful there. So let's see if it went ahead and commented. Let me refresh this page. Should have. If not, we'll have to revisit it and reprompt it. There we go, in progress. So it did actually work. And you could see there is some utility with Rovo that it can actually help you with. Now, when do you not want to use Rovo? So you don't want to use Rovo for any kind of general research, step-by-step instructions, or really anything other than what you want to pull from the context of Atlassian and do within Atlassian. I would really only think of using it specifically when doing something in Jira, in Confluence, and the rest of the Atlassian suite, and pretty much nowhere else. And the reason I say that is because it's just not very good. If I tell Rovo to go through and like give me ideas on the next newsletter to write, it's not going to be very good. It's not going to be as good as ChatGPT. It is free, so I think what they're doing is limiting the amount of tokens and the type of models of AI agents that are being run. So they're typically going to be lower level or like the more affordable ones that are running on the back end. So I think that's what's happening here. That's why I stay away from them. And I really only use them for actions within Jira or Confluence, or to like kind of pull information, get context on things without having to manually count things out or get information on them. That's really the best way to do it. Now, there's one use case that I found really, really cool, and I'm kind of building on top of what we're doing, but that would be specifically with Confluence. So let me pull up Confluence. And what I did was I built an agent that took our meetings and all of our action items, because we'll typically run a meeting. I'll show you a basic example of what our meetings look like, right? So we have a page and we'll call this meeting notes. And in the meeting notes, we'll have an action item and we'll say Josh needs to do X. The problem with this is that I don't really check my Confluence action items very often. So when we take these meeting notes, I like them in Jira, and so does the rest of the team. So what I did was I created an agent, a Rovo agent, that I just automatically start up after we're done with our meeting notes. And I say, hey, if this is assigned to Josh, send it to this space. We have an executive space. If it's assigned to Selena, which is on our marketing team, send this to the marketing board. If this is assigned to Whitney, send it to the implementation board. So we have different team members from different departments. Depending on who they are, I'm going to have it send and create a work item inside of Jira automatically with the context assignee, the full description, and even context from the meeting that it kind of pulls together, which gives us a little bit more in-depth information when pulling those work items. As a result, we don't have to go through and manually create Jira work items for each of our meeting notes that we have in Confluence. We just run the Confluence or run the meeting in Confluence, add all of our action items, and then afterwards, we send them over to Jira with just the trigger of Rovo here with the specific agent. So I'll literally pick the agent similar to the progress comment. I'll hit the conversation starter I have for it, click, and boom, immediately it starts. So that's pretty much how we do it and how we run it. And for context, I actually pulled it up, the actual prompt for anyone who's interested. So I literally told and you could even speak this into like your notes app on your phone. And then I pull that over and say, hey, Claude, give me a really good prompt for Rovo that I can use. And when I was trying to do this manually and just creating it, for whatever reason, it was just giving me the wrong outputs. And I had to, finesse with it and kind of tweak it and get it to work. And finally, when I used Claude to prompt it, it actually worked. So this is the prompt we use to do all of that. We give it the role and the goal, but literally I'm saying assignment and routing. Selena, go to this project. Ruth or Josh, determine the correct project. So I'm actually saying make a decision. And if you're not sure, just ask me. So that's pretty much it. Sets the due date 7 days from now because we have a weekly meeting, applies a label, and then adds a description, summary, project name, issue type, and assignee. So all of that is automatically added without us doing anything. So we just go through, we take the meeting notes, and this saves us for each task maybe a couple of minutes. So every meeting, maybe 10 to 20 minutes. So not too bad, right? If you create the agent once, takes you half an hour, you kind of get your ROI within a couple of weeks. And that's really what we're looking for here. Return on investment on the time that we're spending. So if you wanted a prompt that actually works, this is one that works for me. Again, prompting is everything with Rovo right now. I think in about a year or two, that will change. It'll get really good at inferring what you're asking and giving you the right outputs. Gemini does a phenomenal job of that right now compared to the other AI tools, but I'm assuming they'll all catch up very soon. So steal kind of my prompt layout here if you'd like, but I would very highly encourage you just to use Claude or Gemini, ChatGPT to give you a really good prompt that you could just paste in and test it out, see if it works for you. But that's just a quick rundown. Hopefully that makes sense on how I've started to use Rovo. I think this will just get better over time. Unfortunately, there's a lot of things it doesn't do well, but that is improving very slowly. And at some point, I could see a future where we just use Rovo for literally everything. All of our task updates, reporting, literally anything we want to do, add, comment, get information from, will probably just all be done through Rovo. We're years away from that, but this is kind of the start, and we should start using the tools that we have and the ability of them that we have today. So check it out. If you want any help with Rovo or want to work with us to help create Rovo agents for you and your team, just check out the link in the description and book a call with us. You should be able to see what's called a Jira strategy on our website. You click that button, you book a call, and I will be on that call personally chatting with you on how you can make Rovo better, but also how we can help you in your organization use AI and Rovo better in Atlassian.